If not quite a stranger to fishing in northern waters, I am at best only an occasional visitor, a dabbler. Theory and experience gained for the most part elsewhere, largely on the chalk streams of southern England, are all that I can apply. But Arthur Ransome was a much-travelled man, as well as a fine fisherman. He knew how disadvantaged a visitor can feel, and he wrote about it in a piece called The Local Angler and Others. Correspondent, in sending me a report on his river, remarks, river too low for good fishing. Local fishermen have been making big catches. The distinction drawn is most just. Good fishing is an unprofitable business. It is the business of the visiting angler. Local fishing, on the other hand, is doing quite nicely. But then it is of a very different kind. In the early months of the season, the distinction is not so marked. The visitor does as well as the local. But now, with the wildflowers in profusion by the river, where it runs through the lowland meadows, when the big stones that once made a fine shelter for a trout, when the water swept over the top of them, are standing high with a ragged fringe of dried moss, when haymaking has begun and cut grass comes drifting down, the conditions for good fishing are poor. Anglers are now divided into local fishermen and those others who toil for nothing through the heat of the day and go home to their evening meals when the local men are thinking of putting their rods together. Not much doing, I'm afraid. Too bright, I think. Or something. The local angler is always inclined to look with pity on the visitor, but when days grow hot and the sea trout begin to run, his pity becomes tinged with scorn. The sea trout are running in plenty up one well-known river, but only an odd one or two have been caught, and I asked a local angler why. Well, he said, they come from the towns. They hurry down to the river. They can't wait till dusk, but throw in their flies right away. And by the time they ought to begin, they've frightened every fish in the pool. When they've had a fair lot of blanks, they stop coming. It's time enough for us to start. And as with the sea trout, it's the same thing with the brownies. The local angler, in this weather, does not go down to the river till just before sunset. If he does fish the river by day, he passes by all the places where trout would be taking in other circumstances and goes straight to the places where there's a chance of getting one now. But mostly, if he takes a day's fishing, he leaves the river alone. He watches the visitor, wading the main stream, his handsome rod flashing in the powerful sunlight, and says nothing. He's had the best of the season's fly fishing on the river and is now turning to the becks and the minor tributaries, which, happily for him, the visitor disregards altogether. He would apply the same methods in the main river if there were not too many people trying to do good fishing there. He carries a rod with which he can cast a fly, if opportunity offers, but stiff enough for a more profitable business. He fishes mostly neither dry fly nor sunk fly, but uses instead the old wet worm, and creeps up the little stream like an Indian, throwing his Stewart or pennel tackle, or single small hook, which is better than the big one of our ancestors, before him, into the places in which he caught fish last year, and the year before, and the year before that. The places in which, if he were a trout, he would choose to lie. Sympathetic, intimate imagination, combined with experience, is the whole secret of successful worm fishing. There, under that ash tree, the bank curves. And there, just ahead of that little pillow in the water, there must be a pocket big enough for a trout. There, under that overhanging tussock, must be a cool lie. A good trout is always to be found in this gully, where the little water of the stream is given depth in exchange for breadth. At the corner of that stone is a taking place. The worm swings forward and dives without a splash. Suddenly the line quivers. And a moment later, a fat quarter-pounder is on his way to join his cousins in the basket. And so, up the stream. Now wading ankle-deep between close trees, now wriggling through the bushes on the banks, sometimes with a good fish wishing he had a landing net, sometimes when in a thicket of brambles thanking his stars that he has not. And so, up out of the valley to the high moorland, where the curlews scream overhead and where the lapwings noisily mistake the fisherman for an enemy. At last, high above the valley, the local fisherman rests with his catch on the heather and looks below him. The little beck that has given him his sport is nowhere to be seen. But far down in the lowland, the famous river is dotted here and there with the figures of those who have come from far away to seek good fishing. And with the river at this height, on this day, they might almost as well be laying their flies upon a looking glass.